So I'd like to start off with a story of a client of mine who came to me a few years ago, and any clients I speak of have given their permission to be talked about, okay, so I'm not breaching confidentiality here. Anyway, this man was about 68 and he came to me, and he'd had a very good career in the Foreign Office, with Reuters, BBC, as an investigative journalist, and we were working on something. And it occurred to me, he'd been in Afghanistan for 25 years. And so I said to him, you know, you were in Afghanistan, are you okay? And he said, oh, yes, I've been to see someone. So I said, okay, well then do you mind if we just check this one out? And he said, yes, go ahead. So we did. And he wasn't okay at all. Actually, he was extremely distressed. The whole thing had been shoved under the carpet. And so we worked on it for what was left of his session, which was about 40 minutes. And he came back the following session and said, you know, I feel entirely different. I feel as though a weight has been taken from me that I didn't even know I was carrying. And my relationships are better too, because I'm not as defensive as I was. In fact, his mark of success was when he was playing polo, he didn't have to pretend he was deaf anymore in case he missed the part. So he said, you've got to do something about all those poor girls and boys coming back from war zones. Let me introduce you to the head of combat stress. But that's a different story. Anyway, the good news is that most of us don't have anything quite as severe as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. The good news is also that we can do something about it. The not so good news is that you've got to know what you've got in your unconscious mind before you can deal with it. So like my client, he had no idea. He'd been stuck with it for years until I remembered and we found it. So however successful we are, there's always going to be some areas of our lives that we're not so happy with and that we shove under the carpet. And there it sits, trying to grab our attention, trying to make itself known. And of course we don't want to know, we just hope it's going to go away. And so we get all sorts of physical complaints as well to go with it. So we get backaches and stomach aches and maybe difficulty breathing, headaches, that sort of thing. Now, we think the mind and the body are separate. In fact, we have one set of doctors from here up and another set of doctors from here down. But in fact, what happens in the mind has a profound effect on the body, and what happens in the body also has a profound effect on the mind. And when the mind can't take something, when it's too much for it, what it will do is store in the body whatever it is, so it can sort it out later. And then, of course, because it's feeling a little bit better about things, it doesn't ever go there. So what starts off as unease develops into dis-ease. Now, as I'm sure many of you will already know, if you want to change the circumstances of your life, you've got to change what you think and how you feel first, because the universe mirrors back to us what we're thinking and what we're feeling. In fact, we all live in a little bubble of our own energy, which reflects back to us our hopes, our fears, our expectations. So remember back, and have you ever thought that something was going to go badly wrong? And it did. It met your expectations, it did. Now cast your minds back to when you were newly in love, and you could do no wrong, and everything you said was witty and fascinating. Yes? And how empowering that was. Now cast your minds back to when you were with someone who didn't care for you greatly, and you could do no right, and everything you said was wrong, and you couldn't please the other person at all. Now this is because not only are you in your little bubble of energy that you have created, you are always also subject to other people's little bubbles of energy, and often we let those other people overpower ours. So we greatly underestimate the power and the energy of our thoughts and beliefs, and how we communicate those beliefs to others. We think that if we don't say anything, the others will not know how we really feel. Well, this doesn't actually hold water because only 7% of our communication is vocal. The rest of it we communicate by other means. So we're all putting things out that maybe we'd rather we didn't. If we liken the brain to a computer, the brain is your hardware, and it holds all sorts of programs, which are your software. And those programs will help you to get through life. They will make you cautious, perhaps. And then you have your viruses. And your viruses tell you that you're no good, and nobody wants you, and you're setting yourself up for ridicule if you do something, that other people are more suited to doing things than you, that you're not worthy of it, that you don't deserve it. We tell ourselves endless stories which are negative. And all of these act as an invisible brake on our lives. We are all experts in our field, but this expertise sits as a layer on top of the foundation of the unconscious mind. And the unconscious mind is holding all sorts of patterning that is both learned from these lives and inherited. And the unconscious mind defines how we think about ourselves and how we think about others and what our relationships are like and our thoughts and our fears. And it often acts in direct opposition to what we think in our conscious minds. So you might think, oh, well, I believe this, so I can't possibly believe that. Well, actually, that's untrue. You can believe this, and you can believe that. And you can believe it simultaneously, and it will become a massive conflict in you. It causes great strain, because you don't know quite what you're thinking. And to cap it all, you probably don't even know what you've got in your unconscious mind, so you can't identify it. And it comes as a great shock. So when you get knee-jerk reactions to things, you think, how did that happen? What am I doing? That's your unconscious mind making itself felt. And where do we get these beliefs and fears? Well, we get them from our lives, from our ancestry, from our religions, from our communities. So I'm going to tell you a story of another of my clients. She was a beautiful woman. She had shoulder-length hair, beautiful thick hair, and she was physically beautiful, and she'd had psoriasis on her scalp, not just dandruff, psoriasis on her scalp for 25 years. And she came in for one appointment, she said, I'm your poster girl now. So I said, really? How come? And she said, because that psoriasis I had vanished overnight, which is pretty amazing that the body can do such things. And so I said, really? Well, I better look at the remedies I gave you, see what I gave you. She said, nothing to do with the remedies. This was to do with the work that we did together. Here was the belief she was holding, which was a pretty extraordinary belief. And her belief was that she was a sinner and she needed to wear a hair shirt, which is a very outdated belief. They had that in Tudor times. Does anyone know this belief? Henry Moore. You know, Henry Moore, man from all seasons, he wore a hair shirt. Lots of them did. Hair shirt next to the body to make you thoroughly Thomas More, sorry. Henry Moore is sculpted. Thomas More. Yeah. It makes you thoroughly uncomfortable. And then you put a beautiful cloak on the top so no one knows you're suffering. Okay, so that was what she had done. She'd got the psoriasis on her head, this beautiful hair, no one knew she was suffering. She never wore dark clothes though. It went overnight. I now have lots of people with psoriasis on their heads. Anyway, I believe that what we are doing in our lives is like we come to the edge of a cliff, and this is where we're meant to be crossing this cliff. There's another cliff edge, just not very far away, but there's this chasm. And you have to get across the chasm to the other side of the cliff. How do we do it? We stick a rope bridge across. And yes, you can get across. It's pretty hairy, but we can get across. And there's this chasm full of our unconscious thoughts waiting to get us. And then the wind starts to blow and you're swinging around on this rope bridge and it's not at all comfortable. And I believe that this is how we face our lives. And I think that it is a much better idea to see what you've got in there, deal with it, and have solid ground to walk on. So, having told you why I think it is a good idea to be in touch with your unconscious mind, I'm just going to tell you about another couple of my clients, and then I'm going to show you how to get in touch with your unconscious mind. Okay? So, a young lad, he was about 11 or 12, he was sitting all the exams to go into upper schools, and his mother phoned me in despair and said he has failed every single exam and the one we really want is coming up in 2 weeks. Can you do anything? So I saw this young lad for an hour, and the next thing I knew was he'd got into the school of choice and he is now very happy doing his maths and being part of this school. And the reason why he'd been failing was because one of the teachers at his underschool told him that really he should be staying there. And his parents had been telling him, we want you to get into this school. And he didn't know which way to turn. So he just failed everything. It was the easiest thing to do. He didn't do it consciously, but that's what he ended up doing. And now he's doing very well. A young girl came to me, she was about 18, 19, lovely girl. No confidence to speak of, very nervous about everything. And here was one of the beliefs that aided and abetted that state. When she was quite small, a small child, she and her big brother were playing in the living room. And they were jumping on all the chairs and the sofas, and she was following him around. And then he took a different way and jumped over the coffee table to the armchair opposite. And she tried to follow and wasn't big enough to do it. And she fell and hit her head on the edge of the coffee table. Well, after all the hospital visits and this and that were over, and she was fine, and in fact she barely remembered to tell me this story, it turns out that the belief she had as a residue from that was that every time she was having fun and laughing and everything was nice, something terrible was going to happen. Oh. I believe quite a lot of us have this, that, you know, oh dear, I remember my aunt, I told her she was looking very beautiful. She said, oh my goodness, that means I'm going to be ill. So there's quite a lot of that if you admit to being happy, something awful is going to happen. Well, we got rid of that for her, and she is much happier, and she's enjoying life, and she's engaged on one thing and another, so that's her. I do have other stories, but I thought I would now take you through how to speak to your unconscious mind. Now, I will show you the way to do it, where the conscious mind can't really interfere very much, okay, because it's always interfering. And I call it body dowsing. And for this we need to stand, I'm afraid. You okay? Unfortunately, I realise I'm doing this with you that some of them were such broad subjects that a yes or a no is not going to do it. But anyway, that's the sort of thing that we are holding in our unconscious mind. This is the sort of thing that acts as a brake on everything we do, because we're telling ourselves a very negative story at the same time as trying to be positive. And things become a lot easier when you take away the negative and the positive has got a chance to act and to receive. So, is there anybody who'd like to ask anything after all that? Yes?
You explained it very well. I'm just analysing it now, and it absolutely makes sense to me. But you talked about the conscious and the unconscious earlier on, and as I'm going through that process, I'm now becoming aware, obviously, of the unconscious with that exercise, but also there's the conscious, and I'm wondering if the conscious is still, because I'm more aware, the conscious is still fighting that. So my question is, am I actually getting the correct answer with the swaying? Because the conscious...
You might not be. It might be that your conscious mind is overriding your
That's what I'm... Yeah, that's... Yeah.
But the whole thing of doing it's a body douse is the conscious mind has got more of you to deal with and has less influence.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if you were to come to me, I'd be doing it with your fingers. You'd be sitting there. You would not be swaying through an hour and a half's worth of consultation. But
because I'm so much more aware of the conscious, I'm also thinking I'm probably overwriting
you might
that
have been.
because of.
Especially when this is new to people and they're saying, is this a yes, is this a no, am I doing it right, what are my knees doing, no, I really don't think that, so I'm not going to do it, or whatever it is. So yes, you can override it, but there are ways of getting around that, which,
Okay. Right, okay.
Yeah.
Is it not overwhelming if you have a plan who manages to change many, many negative beliefs in one session, because it's such a fuss in how they've lived their life? Can they cope with completely eradicating, sabotaging beliefs?
Yeah, people generally just feel so much lighter. They say, oh yeah, well that feels better. I can breathe now, or I feel more comfortable now, or whatever it is. For some who I think it might be too fast, I try and go a bit slower.
Do you recommend doing this for anything that we've got now?
Yeah, you can do Christmas presents like this. you can find the presents for other people by saying, will they like this? Yes or no? Have they already got it? Because I became unstuck with will they like it without asking have they already got it? And you can find out yes or no, because your unconscious mind has got links. It doesn't just operate on its own, and you can get answers. Wait, sorry, this lady's hand.
No, that's all right. You can go before.
Okay, you then.
I can go?
Yes, you can go.
So I would have questions about how you change these beliefs, but I assume you're going to move on to that, is that?
Well, I change these beliefs because it's through an energy. So I'm, in theory, I'm meant to see what's going on. I'm meant to take it up to the Creator. We're meant to look at it together. We're meant to see the difference, and I'm meant to come down again. In practice, I just expect it to be done. It's a bit like driving. You know, you're sticking your hand out and you're looking and you're doing this, and then eventually you're just driving asleep.
Do you mean you make people aware of their beliefs through what we've just done?
Well, people become aware of their beliefs because we've just done what we've just done. But becoming aware is part of it, but actually removing it is the greater part of it.
Right.
And how do I remove it, you say?
That's
By doing that process, except I don't actually do anything, I just expect it. And if it doesn't happen, I find out why it doesn't happen, and I find out all the supporting beliefs that go into making that process, making that person think as they do, and we eliminate them one by one if it's not serving them.
Oh.
So how do I do it? I'm afraid I don't know.
Okay. So it's that process we've just been through that would start the process of eradicating.
The process I do is an energetic process. That process you've just been through is to define what's happening in your unconscious mind so you can be aware of it.
Right.
You can have that removed, whether you do all this body dowsing or not, is just so that you know what's going on
Right.
and that you're part of the conversation.
Okay.
Yes.
I was interested because right at the beginning I was swaying and what have you, and then suddenly you mentioned that name Corbyn and like the fear came in, and it was just like I didn't move. I just didn't move. I was just like,
You were just paralysed with fear.
Paralysed.
So perhaps I should take from you I'm paralysed with fear and see how you get on after
No,
that.
I know, but fear is always the problem, you know, with all these questions, isn't it, really? Because the fear, that as soon as you mentioned that question, it was just like, I wasn't moving, I was just standing
It's
there.
fear, it's expectation, it's belief, and it's the feeling that because it's happened before, this is a big one, the past equals the future. Because it's happened before, it's got to happen again, because that's how it is. Okay, so those things contribute to each person what they're thinking. Yes?
If you generally feel very positive, is that because you're very fortunate or just deluded?
If you feel very positive, you are very fortunate to feel so positive, and maybe you're not self-sabotaging quite as badly as others. Maybe. Because a lot of what we do is self-sabotage.
But it's also, isn't it, to be, you don't feel confident in yourself, and that's it. A lot of these questions were, you know, I don't feel confident about you, and that's the issue, is that
It
about
is.
people being confident, you know, people, don't you think?
What was your question?
Well, it's not a question, but I just think a lot of it's confidence in themselves.
Of course it is, and there are reasons why you don't. So my job is to identify those reasons and get rid of them for you.
Yeah, it's past experiences.
It's past experiences.
Yeah.
Experiences who people put you down and suddenly you need to be lifted up, and it's just like,
So
you're not that bad person. You're not that,
That's right. You are not defined by that.
And I think as you
move
get
on.
older, it doesn't, I think as I get older, I think to myself, well, actually, no, I'm not putting up with that. I'm not good. I'm not that person.
This is what happens with people.
Well, don't you
with
think?
difficulty.
Yeah. So are you better not to have any beliefs then? Because your beliefs in a way trap you.
Well, you can have lots of beliefs, but if those beliefs minimise you and keep you small and stop you doing things or putting yourself forward or getting into relationships or being loving with the people you should be loving with, then they're not serving you, are they? So it's better if they go.
So what's the next step after that?
Yes.
So
How do you
address those? So, for example.
Well, how do you address those issues? You need to go to a practitioner and have them done for you.
Is that
Or-
yourself or you?
Yeah. Yeah,
with
there
it?
are others, but yeah.
I just want to deal with anxiety before the examination or
Oh,
job.
yes. There's lots of ways. Well, it's because you're frightened of failure. So you have an examination, so you're frightened of failure.
How should you deal with it?
Well, let me tell you about a young girl who came to me, and I treated her and her family homeopathically for many years before I became a theta healer, and she made a real meal of every exam she ever took. She'd make herself ill, and so she couldn't revise because she was in such a state, and the whole family suffered with her. And so I learned theta healing, and I spoke to the parents, and I said, let me do that with her for an hour. So we did, and this was at the time of her A-levels, and far from failing every single A-level, she came out with very good grades. And so off she went to university, and 3 years later I got her again because she was on the wrong course and she wasted her parents' money and she didn't know what she was doing, and it went on like that. And so we spent another hour together. The story behind that was that she had a very clever and beautiful younger sister. And this very clever and beautiful younger sister, who was brilliant at chemistry and enjoyed exams, how was this older girl, who was also very beautiful, but not confident like that, how was she going to be different? She was always going to be an also-ran. So she decided, unconsciously, to fail, to make herself different. So that's what she'd been doing for years and years. She had failed spectacularly for years. So this was not a conscious thing. She didn't mean to fail everything. She didn't know she was in competition with her sister. In fact, they were very good friends. And then, after that, she did extremely well, and I got a call from her mother who said, Debbie, this is Chrissy here. Charlotte's got it first. I can't believe it. She can't believe it. Her friends can't believe it. Oh, I shouldn't be saying that, should I? She said. Anyway, they all want to come and see you now, but it's a bit late for them, isn't it? So, and now she is in charge of an art gallery or something like that in Hong Kong and doing very well.
But surely, with failure, and I have two girls, and they went through failure, they weren't all brilliant, they went through that failure, but through that failure, they got stronger. And they
Sometimes.
actually succeeded much more than...
My youngest son did that.
You
His
know what I mean?
competitiveness just
Yeah,
clocked in and off he went and
it's
did what
up
was
to
needed.
them in their consciousness to actually say, right, okay, but it's good to fail and then to come back.
Of course it is, but there are some who get stuck in failure.
No, that's true, that is true.
And if you're stuck there, it's much better if you get out.
Well, that's the people that fail once and then think that's it.
That's right.
You know,
That's my
or
life.
fail big. Or
I'm a
fail
failure.
big and then
I mean, I had a young man in today, he'd done 5 years at Cambridge and still came out without a degree. And you can imagine what that's done to him in his life.
How did you deal with anxiety before flying?
I actually had someone recently who did that, and she managed her trip to Cancun without any problems at all. Well, it's fear. It's fear of all sorts of things. In her case, it was because it was linked with other things that were miserable for her. So it was linked to the death of her husband. It was linked to this and that. And it wasn't actually about flying at all. And another one, we reduced it to just fear of EasyJet.
Before you go off somewhere. I know it's only 1 in a million, billion,
Yes.
isn't it?
It can be dealt with. It can be dealt with.
Dealt
Yes.
with.
Do you think that your behaviour can impact on these beliefs? Some people think that if you behave powerfully, then you'll develop powerful beliefs, and vice versa.
I think if you go around with a smile on your face, you're more likely to be happy than if you look miserable. You also get a different reaction from other people if you're smiling, and they are more likely to enable you than not. And so, I mean, I know there's a lot of people who go around saying, I'm the greatest, I'm going to do this, I'm going to win the lottery and things like that. And I think there's a middle road in there somewhere. Yes.
You say that we do better if we smile, and I like to smile. But what about Victoria Beckham? She is famous for looking miserable,
She's doing all
but
right.
apparently she's
She's obviously got other attributes, hasn't she, as well as smiling. And she didn't have to make herself successful. She did it very, very early on, and now she is continuing that success.
That's what marketing ploy.
And other people want her good wishes, so she doesn't have to behave in certain ways, yeah?
But surely to grow in the world, you have to honestly react to it. You have to be in tune with what you really feel at every.
Of course you do. But
be
if you're
authentic.
getting stuck and not able to get on with your life, this is not, I've got this reaction and this is my true reaction, so I've got to live with it for the rest of my life. It's how can I make this better? Why am I feeling like this? What's it tied up with? Is it linked with my childhood? Is it linked with what was done to me at school? What's it linked with, and why do I feel like this? And you find out why. And if it's not necessary for you to have it, you're better off without it. It's not a question of being dishonest with the world and going around with a smile on your face where it doesn't deserve it. It's a question of being able to ride the waves instead of being submerged by them, which is why I included Corbyn and Brexit in this, so that we can ride it and not all go down. Yeah?
Well, it's also Brexit. It's that fear of the Brexit, which is probably going to make it worse than the reality. Yeah.
It's not just you; it's paralysing. Every time you look at the
So
papers,
people
it's got
don't,
something.
people don't do anything, like invest or because it's that fear of it.
We're
But not
still,
just
we still got to live with it.
Yeah, exactly.
So what use is your fear to you? Are you going to make a change to it? If you have the fear?
The difference between losing what you have is always harder for the unknown. Everyone hates the idea of losing something that they've already got.
At least they're too attached to it. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps they're attached to the wrong things though.
Yeah, they may well be. Yeah, so it's hard to know.
So
Yeah.
It's like if you have ambitions to move on.
Exactly,
then
yeah. How do you get past
fear
that?
That will impinge those ambitions.
Sure.
Yes.
I'd like to ask a question which you probably come across, maybe not from people in this room, not for me anyway, because I'm very interested in what you have to say. But psychotherapists, for example, traditional psychotherapists, to me, it's almost like they don't want to cure the patient, because if they cure the patient, they lose the client. You seem to be getting quite, from the examples you've given, results fairly quickly.
I do.
So you're sort of in a different market to a psychotherapist,
I am.
in a sense. But meditation, NLP, what you're doing is a fairly new thing. Although we hear it a lot now, personal development things, a fairly new thing in the history of sort of health, really. So you're going to have a lot of cynicism attached to what you're doing.
Cynicism doesn't affect the result. Okay?
So that's a good answer. I have my answer now. What would you say to the critics?
It doesn't affect the result. Right? You get the result whether you're cynical or not. It's not faith healing. You don't have to believe in it.
Yeah. Because a lot of the establishment will
I've treated
feel
doctors,
threatened.
I've treated all sorts of people who've just fed up with the state they're in and decided to do something about it. Yeah.
But are you healing people who are stuck in their lives and you're trying to move them along and make them happier people? And is that what you're doing?
Well, I mean, different people come for different reasons.
Yeah.
And yes, who are stuck in their lives. I mean, I've had quite a few children come to see me. There was one boy who was vile. You know, he was horrible to his parents. He created such dissension at home. School were threatening to throw him out. He wanted to kill his younger sister.
Why was that?
Because he felt that she had taken the love that, basically, he felt that she was responsible for taking his pride of place. He was 12.
12.
His sister was younger.
His sister was younger. He made her life absolutely miserable. And by the time we finished, the mother was emailing me saying the school think he's great now, his life at home is much easier and things like that. So I really love dealing with kids because it means you have one less disaffected adult out there.
Which techniques did you use?
I use theta healing.
Wow.
And the kids love it because they think it's so weird that we're doing fingers and things, and they think they can, because that's how we do it with fingers. And they think this is really weird and a really good game, and so that they're happy to do it.
What's that you sort of do?
You intertwine fingers, so I'll get their yeses and their nos. Closed circuit, yes. Open circuit, no. Yes.
I mean, for instance, that boy came to you 12 and he was cured of his...
it took 3 or 4 sessions. I mean, it didn't happen instantly.
Is he cured for life, though? Is he
well,
cured for life?
yes.
Or
unless
he
has...
back to you with a different issue?
He might come back with a different issue. But I try and find all the issues that there are, so that we don't have to keep going to and fro. And unless he has a very good reason to reinstate all of that, and I try and find those reasons as well. You know, what's behind it? Why should you want to? What are you getting out of being like this? And so, yeah. So it should be permanent.
And how similar to hypnosis do you think it is?
There is no hypnosis. They're all fully conscious.
I'm not saying it is the same, but this gentleman's point here that you try and affect quick, fast healing, fast effects.
Well, maybe there's a similarity there, except I don't do hypnosis, and personally I've never found it to be effective. Not on me, at any rate.
Sure.
Have you got any family members that were sort of healers, or any history or anything? It's quite interesting you've found this skill. And
yeah. Well, I started off as a homeopath because I was ill. I was an actress and I took so many antibiotics just to keep my place on stage that I became really ill. I destroyed my immune system and nobody knew what to do with me at all. And I went from one to the other, and it was pretty useless. And then eventually I found an acupuncturist who said, I can't deal with this, you go to the homeopath. And I had to travel to Horsham once a week. Which was a long way to go. And anyway, I was terribly rude to the man, poor man. I was terribly rude. And he gave me my first remedy, and I felt weights lifting off my shoulder. So that got me interested. And I thought, this is really interesting after a bit. You know, I'm getting better, the mind and body are one. And people wanted to talk to me about theatre and television. I wanted to talk about philosophy and alternative medicine. And so eventually, when I was pregnant with my first child, I decided, well, let's put my money where my mouth is. And as soon as he was born, I enrolled in homeopathy school. And so I'd be breastfeeding and learning materia medica in the night. So that's how I did it. Yes.
Do you do any rapid eye movement therapy?
Rapid eye movement therapy is very good. It's slower. It's slower than what I do.
You don't incorporate it in what you do?
No. If you've got the fast track, why go slow?
Okay. So yours. Why is yours faster then?
Because it goes instantly. You don't have to be tapping them.